Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. We're going to do an unsleeving today of this magazine, C3i Magazine number 29. This is, if I'm not mistaken, the oldest issue of C3i that you can currently get. I bought this directly from RBM Studio, Roger McGowan, and I did notice that it was about $10 cheaper than it normally runs on, that these magazines normally run on Amazon. So let's open her up and see what we get. I can tell you that this does include Mark Herman's Plan Orange, which is a hypothetical game based on the Empire of the Sun system. Empire of the Sun needs no endorsement from me, but if you haven't played it, it is totally worthwhile. Let's look at the magazine first. So, magazine, very heavy stock, looks like 64 pages. Let's see what we get. There's a whole bunch of goodies in here as usual. Okay, so we start out with a Waterloo. This was released in 2015, by the way. So I think the next issue of C3i is going to be number 34. So we have a Waterloo Bicentenary, 1815 to 2015, by Dana Lombardi, who's a well-regarded designer. Here is an article by Volker Renke on Coin Design Series Complexity. This will, unless I'm very much mistaken, be absolutely good reading. It looks like a quite in-depth article. Here is an article by Lucas Brooks on Empire of the Sun, it looks like. Okay. We have an interview with Brian Train, who is the designer of a bunch of stuff. The thing that I've played of his is A Distant Plane, which is one of the Coin Series games. There's this Nicaragua game, which was released in Strategy and Tactics number 120. That seems like a long time ago, but I guess 1988, so I guess it is. And that's a kind of a classic design now. Brian Train specializes in insurgency and counterinsurgency type of games, and he's got a whole bunch of stuff on those subjects, including some things that Brief Border Wars game from Compass that just released relatively recently, and that series from Hollandspiel that is also pretty well regarded. Here's an ad for Vivictus magazine. The Travelers of Catalan. One American game designer's visit to the land of the Euro by Jason Matthews. Okay, so Jason Matthews is one of the designers of Twilight Struggle. Here's Simon. I've just put catnip down, and he absolutely does not care about the catnip. He is much more focused on getting attention. All right, come on. Go down here. I'm off business. Okay, so big travelogue tape article. C3i Gamer Profile. Giancarlo Ciccioli. My Italian pronunciation is exceptionally dodgy. Here is the Cleo's Corner article by Mark Herman. This one's about Churchill, which is a game that I like. It's a challenging game in many ways, including it's liking it is challenging too sometimes. But I think it's a really interesting design. Here is an article on Triumph and Tragedy. Now, Triumph and Tragedy is a game I don't own, but I've played it about 3 times, and I like it quite a bit. It is a very neat sort of World War II to pre-World War II to post-World War II sandbox game. Not very post, but starts, I think, in 1935. Confessions of an 84-year-old Teenager by Tom Shaw, former vice president of the Avalon Hill Game Company. That's interesting. Navigating the Labyrinth of Your First Design. Who wrote this? By Trevor Bender. Okay, also a designer of note. This is regarding the Labyrinth: The Awakening, which is the first expansion. I believe it's the first expansion for Labyrinth, which is another game that I like a lot. One of the things that I'm seeing here is it's been kind of a while since I've kind of checked into C3i, and I picked up the 3 issues that were available that I didn't have, and am finding that they are very strongly supportive of games that I have and like. Mr. Madison's War is a game I don't have. It's by Gilbert Collins, who has a YouTube channel, a fantastic YouTube channel that you should be subscribed to if you aren't already. But he is also the designer of Mr. Madison's War. And I think he's got something in the pipeline with Compass as well on the American War of Independence, which I actually expect a lot out of that game because A, he's done some video on it, and it's going to be called War for America, is I believe at least the working title. He's done some video on it, it looks interesting, and B, he's Canadian, and it will be interesting to see a not American or not United States perspective on that subject. Here's the Jeu de Gloire series. Now, I mentioned in a previous video that about the more recent issue of C3i that has the Battle of the Sea in it. It turns out, and this was pointed out to me by Roger on Twitter, actually, that the Jeu de Gloire series actually originated in C3i Magazine, in C3i number 14, which I hadn't known. There's a really interesting history behind this series that I really had no idea. I'd heard of the series. I had no idea it was based on a collaboration with Richard Berg. I had no idea that it has its roots in the Triumph and Glory system. And actually, I'm not sure I knew that Triumph and Glory had more than one volume released by GMT, but it did. So this is on more Waterloo Bicentennial stuff. Game box printing and assembling. This is always neat to see. Los Angeles production team. One wonders if they are still assembling these boxes in Los Angeles. My guess would be no. And here we have our regular feature, Great Battles of History. Sparta's Persian Expedition, the Battles of Meander and Sardis, 397 and 395 BC. This is for Hoplite. Honestly, there's in pretty much every issue of C3i, there is some kind of support for Great Battles of History, usually for either Alexander, SPQR, or Hoplite. Honestly, it's almost worth it for me to buy the magazines just for that. But in addition to that, we are going to have an enormous amount of additional stuff. Okay, we have our counter sheet manifest here. I'm going to keep this out because I might need it. Because I'm not going to be sure how much some of this stuff is. All right, so we got Mark Herman's Plan Orange. This is based on the War Department's planning for a war that might hypothetically have occurred with Japan in this time period, 1932 to 1935. It's obviously going to be a very different war than we saw from 1941 to 1945. So this is a semi-gloss satin type finish. Looks like about, it's a 24-page rulebook. And this, of course, is based on the Empire of the Sun system, which, like I said, needs no introduction from me. If you're not familiar with it, you should be. We have a map, which is a full-size map. Absolutely a full-size map. I will probably put this game in my Empire of the Sun box, I suspect. The other Empire of the Sun add-on game was South Pacific, and that is actually just a scenario for the main Empire of the Sun game, and it is included in the recent printing of Empire of the Sun. Empire of the Sun is out of print. There's a P500 for a new reprint for it right now. I have no doubt that it will be reprinted. So the map here is somewhat different from the Empire of the Sun map, right? You don't get nearly as much China, you don't get India, you don't get any of Australia. You do have this strategic display right here. So there's some interesting things going on here. And then you have cards, because Empire of the Sun is, of course, a card-driven game. So you have a US deck of what looks like 24 cards, and a Japanese deck of what looks like 8 times 3 is 24, yeah. And they're on this sort of punchboard stuff. I would absolutely sleeve these cards, personally. I think that is very desirable, because these as like not cards, these are probably not going to wear that well. But just sleeve them and you'll be fine. The decks aren't that big. All right, so we got that. Plan Orange Player's Notes by Gary Gonzalez. Okay, it ain't your father's EOTS. Cool. And here's a second article by Rory Aylward. Okay. Ooh, okay. This is interesting. This is an expansion or what-if scenario for Quatrobar on Waterloo 1815, which is the Jeu de Gloire system. I don't own those games. Presumably this is what would happen if Davout was actually on the field with Napoleon at that time, which he was not. And those of us who consider Davout to be Napoleon's finest commander would find that scenario fairly interesting. All right, so we have scenarios for Wing Leader here. I don't own Wing Leader. I have played it, and it didn't really work for me, but that could easily have been me and the day and the people that were trying to teach to us and all that. So here's our GBOH card for Hoplite, 2 battles. And here we have a counter sheet. Now this is the older, thinner style of counter sheet. So what do we have? We have our stuff for Plan Orange, which is all this stuff, it looks like. Here's some stuff for some of the Battles of the American Revolution games. If you have the new tri-pack of that game, I think you have these replacements in the thicker counter stock. Here's your GBOH stuff. These expert counters, I don't know what those are. I think those are for Wing Leader, actually. Here's some stuff for Blue Cross White Ensign, which I own, which it remains unpunched. Here's some replacement counters for Chariots of Fire, which is a GBOH game that I literally just punched the other day. Here's something for Alicia. And we got a bunch of Wing Leader stuff here. So not 100% of this is stuff that I can use necessarily, but and it looks like we have a replacement Fightin' Joe Hooker for the People, which is another classic Mark Herman game, actually. So this episode has turned into the Mark Herman Love Fest, which is perhaps not entirely either unexpected or unjustified. Okay, so yet another solid-looking issue from C3i Magazine. Some interesting stuff in here, and for all its reputation, I hear people say it's a house organ, but there's stuff from non-GMT. There's a major what if thing from a non-GMT publication in here. On the other hand, I think you can buy the Vivictus stuff from GMT in the US, and it has a good reputation. I know that. I don't have any personal experience with it. So C3i number 29, definitely worth picking up if you're interested in any of these games or any of these variants or game or articles that tie into any of these games. Also, I kind of recommend getting it now if you are interested. If you get it through C3i, it's like $35. It's more expensive from Amazon, but if you have Amazon Prime, you don't necessarily pay for shipping. And once these things go out of print, they go for crazy money. So if you're interested in it, I do recommend grabbing it while it's still available. If you've enjoyed the unbagging, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click the little bell icon to get notified when new content comes out. Until next time, thanks for watching, and happy wargaming.